There were some questions. There was a question this week about rough mixes and what do you listen for in a rough mix before you start your mix. And I'm actually curious because you sometimes you're mixing things that you just get sent a rough and you get sent stems and then you mix. And then some songs are songs that you've cut the vocals. So I imagine the approaches are probably a little bit different. How do you approach them?
To be honest, it's evolving, you know, like every project is different. So if it's someone where, like, I never did this shit. I used to always start, like, wipe the session clean and start from there, or work off the stems from scratch. But off late, I feel like people have been, like, you know, so tied to the demo. So these last few ones, I kind of start with where they have it. Unless it's something really crazy, then I'll tend to dial it back, but I still leave it. You know, like, say there's a compressor doing, like, adding like 15 dB and compressing a lot, like, you know, 20 dB. I'll reduce it a significant amount, but I'll still keep what they have over there, and then I'll work from then on. And I feel like I get like people like approve mixes way quicker like that. So it just depends. If you really want to get in and work, and, like, you know, if it's an artist that I know, like, I have free reign with, or that kind of trusts me to do my thing, like T-Shine, for example, I did a couple of his records, and with his stuff, I, like, wiped everything. I started, you know, just keep the raw vocals. I left some of the effects throws that they had and stuff, but in terms of vocal tone and like treatment and everything, it was, I built it up from scratch. It just depends, man. Every project is different. I'm mixing a project for my girlfriend right now, and with her too, she's so set on the roughs. So I was just like, all right, cool. I started with her session, and one by one, I was like, okay, cool. You're using this reverb. Let's see if it sounds better with this reverb. And every choice I made along the way, because it was small and incremental and she was part of the process, she's like, oh yeah, it is better, it is better, it is better. And I was like A-Bing everything. And we got the whole record done in like 20, 30 minutes, not even. And I was like, okay, cool. If I can work faster like this and, like, not go back and forth with revisions, it's, you know.
Well, it's an interesting part of how records are being made. And we've talked about this a little bit, where people who are giving you roughs, they're giving you mixes. They're just giving you their mixes, because it's not like you have, you know, you can use FabFilter, Pro Q3 and they can't, or something. Like, everybody has the same tools essentially. I mean, obviously we'll talk about fancy hardware and you know, $10,000 compressors and all that, but by and large, people are out there mixing. That's part of why these conversations, I think, are useful to people, because everybody can do it. So for you to then do those finishing touches seems to make a lot of sense. But it's also interesting. I think it's good for people to hear that, you know, I've gotten a few questions in DMs in the last week about approaches, particular approaches for EQing something or harshness or something. And the answer is always, the people who are the best at this know how to use all the tools, and then we'll just pick the right one for the situation. So it sounds like there are records where, if it makes sense, you'll on the fly just go, all right, I'm going to do a few tweaks. I know what they're going for. I'm not going to mess with it. And the other ones, you're like, I'm going to do everything from scratch. And do you just make those decisions on the fly based on the project, that sort of thing?
Yeah, based on the project, based on the relationship with the artist, and based on what the rough sounds like. If the rough is like, if you can tell when someone's put in a lot of effort, and it might not be what you would do. See, I was just going to add to what you were saying earlier. Like, when people prepare the stems and when people are doing it, I feel like what people tend to do is they tend to, too little of something is great, because then I can do it. It leaves room for me to do it. It's when people do too much of something, like they'll DS too hard. And I love fucking DS. I love getting the harshness out, but there's a fine line between, you know, going too far and, like, just being the right amount.
Sounds like people have a lisp on their vocal.
Exactly. So then what that means is I'll have to go back in and do the opposite of what you normally do. Draw up the S's and stuff. There's a project I'm working on right now where some of the vocals, it's a complete album. There's really dope artist. He's on RCA, and it's more like R&B. It's rap too, but it's more like R&B and singing. It's kind of different from what I normally do. But I've been having a lot of fun with it, and with that is where, you know, you have to, like, draw up a lot of the S's and do a lot of stuff like that. The opposite of what you would normally do, just because so much has been committed in. So I would say when people do send it, if you can, like, just back off a little bit, and then you know, you get that sound. But sometimes, like, crazy 10, 20 dB of compression is what they like. That just gives it an energy. Another thing I've realized sometimes is when you, and like, again, like the stems are lined up and everything. This is the preface to what I'm going to say next. But when you get stems in and when a whole track comes together and there's, you know, mix bus compression and it's limited and everything is done together, sometimes the feel changes in terms of timing. And you got to be really mindful of that. Like just the timing and the groove. You might have a different element. Like maybe the hi-hat was really loud before and you've turned it down. And same with the snare, but now that's changed the whole feel of the record and stuff. So that's kind of what, where you have to throw some of the technical shit out the window and just go with what feels right for the record.
It's a good point. And, I notice it a lot when just playing in a writing session and just destroying a mix bus with clipping just to see what happens.
Yeah.
Feel can change dramatically. Because you're getting the pump of a compressor, the release time of the compressor based on the tempo, how, like you said, is one of the most interesting things is if you just have a beat and then you clip it and all of a sudden the places where the kick and snare hit, everything's pulling back, obviously. So the hi-hat gets this bouncy feel to it. And exactly. I've always wondered about that. People ask versions of this question all the time. How do you send those stems to a mixer if you have a drum bus that is smashing things and therefore you're getting a feel with the hi-hat? How do you prefer to get that? If somebody has a beat, so again, for people unfamiliar, like let's say you make a drum beat, then you make a drum bus and clip it like crazy, and the effect of that distortion and compression makes the feel a certain way that isn't otherwise there. How do you, obviously you'll hear it in the rough mix, but how do you deal with that? How should people send stuff?
I think it's not how should they send, they should send it the way the rough sounds, the way the artist is used to listen to it. That's like the most important thing, I think.
But if say they're doing it on Ableton or Logic or something, and they have, you want as the mixer to be able to control the individual, the kick and snare and things like that. Should they also? But if they just bounce them individually, you won't get the feel. Of it hitting together.
It's tricky, man. But you have to like a lot of times, like people will, and I don't expect producers to start doing this, but like people will. Set the input of the compressor, like print that section, and then send that to the input of the compressor through the side chain, and that way, and it's not outputting anything. It's still triggering the same way it would. So there's times where I would do that. I don't expect producers to do that. I think that's just one of those things where, as a mixer, you have to assess and see. And if it is doing that, you'll end up like you can hear it. You can hear it in a rough. A lot of times it'll be better, but when something you're doing is killing it, you just have to like figure it out, man. Do unconventional shit, like crush it and see if it works. I hate doing that, but sometimes it works. It feels, it doesn't look right, but it feels right. So you're like, all right, cool.
Well, this is the thing we talk about too. There's one of the clips we put up on the Live with MattRad clips channel talking about mixing like a producer, like understanding what you're really trying to achieve from a musical and songwriting level as the mixer is actually really important, because you hear a rough, you pull up stems, you're like, what's different about this? You know what the intent is of the beat and how it's supposed to sound. And so it's really your job to recreate that stuff.
Exactly, dude. I was doing a mix with someone the other day, and I went to their studio. So I wasn't really familiar with the studio, and I just, it was one of those things where I did the vocal stuff and I put it into their session. And I was just, so it wasn't really my mix. I was looking at the stuff going on and I was like, yo, there's a compressor here and it's obviously on the mix bus and it's pegging 12 dB of gain reduction, but it sounds fine. Like it doesn't sound anything like crazy, but I would like still be like, yo, that can't be on the mix bus, and I would go dial it back. But it wasn't my session, so I didn't say anything or whatever, and it sounded cool. It's just not something I would normally do, but to each his own, man. There's no like, at this point, I've realized there's no right, there's no wrong. We work for the artist, and it's whatever the fucking artist wants, man. I'm over like I don't, like, I've been through that, like the whole ego thing or whatever. Like you work for the artist, you're gonna keep working and keep doing stuff. They're the ones that actually have the project tied to their name, so you just got to do what they do.
Those are the words of a veteran right there.
Thanks for watching. Just a reminder, all of this content is free. There's no secret knowledge here. There's no Patreon. We don't read ads. We don't have sponsors. We're just trying to build a knowledge base. All that we ask in return is that you share it with somebody. Thanks so much.